welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to, this is the Anthropology and Sociology Interest Club meeting. And tonight we are honored to have our guest, Damien Bale. He's the local chapter leader of the Satanic Temple, and he is here tonight to talk to us about atheistic Satanism and the redefining of religion in a culture of Christian privilege. So I'm glad that you've all joined us tonight to learn something and hear a different perspective. So you're seated in the back there at the tables with all the lab equipment. Please don't touch the lab equipment. We've sort of had to improvise this room. We were supposed to have a different room booked, but it didn't work out that way. So we will make do with what we have, but without further ado, I give you Damien Bale.
Greetings, Ave Satanis. My name is Damien Bale. I'm the director and founder of the St. Louis chapter of the Satanic Temple. And I first got interested in TST just a few months ago, really. It's been over a year since I first heard about him, but I didn't actually investigate it until just last summer. And what I discovered was it was like someone had custom written a religion just for me. So I was pretty impressed, but I'm not much of a joiner. So I thought about it for a couple of days, and then I finally signed up. Now there's going to be some questions afterwards, so you can write those down if you have any. Now the first thing I want to go over is misconceptions. Now some of you may be a little too young to know about this, but a lot of the ideas that people have about Satanism come from the Satanic Panic. And that was a moral panic back in the 80s and 90s, kind of similar to witch hunts or McCarthyism or something like that. And the rumors were that there was some sort of satanic cult that was ingrained in every level of society, government, the police forces, judiciary systems, everything. And that they sacrificed children and animals and all kinds of crazy stuff. But as it turns out, there wasn't actually any evidence for that. But it took a while for the moral hysteria to die down on that. So that's the primary thing that people think of, although maybe not younger people, because it was quite some time ago. Now, the next thing is that some people think that we worship an actual devil, but that's not actually the case. Now, there are theistic Satanists, but that's not even really the case for them, because they're kind of more deist, really, than theist. So we're actually atheistic. Now, when I talk about atheism, I mean I define that as a lack of belief in a god or gods, and it's of the agnostic variety. So it's two separate things: lack of knowledge and lack of belief. So agnostic atheism, as informed by a point of view of philosophical and scientific skepticism. Now, the other thing that we get confused with a lot are the LaVeyan Satanists, or the Church of Satan, as they're called. And they're by far the largest group of Satanists, atheistic or otherwise. And the Church of Satan was started in 1966 by Anton LaVey. And they really, the atheism is the only thing that we have in common. They have a very social Darwinist sort of point of view, because their tradition of Satan is based on Might is Right by Ragnar Redbeard and the philosophies of Ayn Rand, and some Aleister Crowley mysticism thrown in here and there. So, and ours is more liberal and egalitarian, I would say. So that brings me now to more about what the Satanic Temple actually is. Now, the Satanic Temple was founded a little over 2 years ago by Lucian Greaves and Malcolm Jerry. And the idea behind it was to have a religion that's entirely divorced from supernaturalism. And also to be a force for kind of dislodging the majority religion from a position of privilege so that everyone is on equal footing. So the idea is that they don't get to just say that, well, it's my religion, and then have that trump what everybody else thinks, because we actually define religion as sincere, deeply held belief. And even people without any supernatural belief have just as sincere and deeply held beliefs as people who are of more traditional religions. And it's also supposed to provide a kind of a culture and a sense of community and that sort of thing. We're still in the beginning stages of that, though, so we haven't done a whole lot of that yet. And it's the activism kind of operates on the principle that some people would call the poison pill, which means something that's so terrible in the minds of some people that they just won't accept that option no matter what. And so it ends up working out kind of like this. They want to have their religion involved in government, whether it be monuments on display or prayers or anything. And we say, all right, you want to do that? We get to have ours in there too. And ours is Satanism. And that generally doesn't go over very well. So usually they start liking the idea of separation of church and state at that point. Now, getting into the philosophy, it's kind of like a left-hand path version of modern humanism. And I've been calling it modern Satanism, partly because it's so similar to modern humanism, and also because somebody does a podcast, which I'll be on that in the near future. I don't know if any of you listen to that. But in a nutshell, we believe in empathy, compassion, reason, social justice, and rebelling against anything antithetical to those concepts. Now, to expand on that, the morality part of it is very much like humanism. So it's based on the idea that human beings are of the highest value, of primary importance. And the normative values that we have are based on our evolution as a social species, which has given rise to what we refer to as a conscience. But then we can also apply logic to that and get a more full morality from that. Now, there's a lot more to it, and I do have other material where I go over that, but I'm not going to get into all of that right now. Now, the next thing is the understanding of reality. We follow scientific and philosophical skepticism because those have proven for as long as we've had a civilization to be by far the best way of understanding reality. Everything that you see around you, as far as technology, came about through science and was based on the idea of skepticism, which has an epistemology of reason and empirical evidence. And so everything must have some sort of basis in reason and or empirical evidence. Now, at this point, it's pretty much the same as humanism, but now I'm moving on to the left-hand path and the stuff specific to Satanism, and this is where it's a little bit different. Now, left-hand path versus right-hand path is kind of like this. The more traditional religions are right-hand path, which is kind of joining with the one, becoming one with Christ, that sort of thing. Whereas left-hand path is about individualism. It's about the discovery and fulfillment of self. And Satanism is a left-hand path religion. And at its most basic, it's just an adversarial religion, or a religion of opposition. Satan simply means adversary. So we take an adversarial approach to social conventions and that sort of thing. So Satan is, to us, a metaphorical construct which symbolizes these ideas, and ours is a literary Satan. So we get some of the characteristics from things, well, a little bit from the Christian Bible, but more so from Paradise Lost by Milton, or Revolt of the Angels by Anatole France. Now we have 7 tenets that feature in our philosophy, so I'll read those to you. Number 1, one should strive to act with compassion and empathy towards all creatures in accordance with reason. 2, the struggle for justice is an ongoing and necessary pursuit that should prevail over laws and institutions. Number 3, one's body is inviolable, subject to one's own will alone. 4, the freedoms of others should be respected, including the freedom to offend. To willfully and unjustly encroach upon the freedoms of another is to forego your own. Beliefs should conform, this is number 5, beliefs should conform to our best scientific understanding of the world. We should take care never to distort scientific facts to fit our beliefs. Number 6, people are fallible. If we make a mistake, we should do our best to rectify it and resolve any harm that may have been caused. Number 7, every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. So, to put these ideas all together, Satanism is embracing your outcast status, being the outsider, the eternal rebel against the ultimate authoritarian. And we are against arbitrary social convention, unjust laws, and we believe in individualism and the fulfillment of self. And the concepts like reason, compassion, empathy, social justice all play an important role in that. And also things like the proliferation of knowledge, It's also very important to us. Now, chapters is something that we started doing a little bit more recently. That's just been around for a few months. And the idea of chapters is to have a loosely affiliated organization that can work in conjunction with the global organization and can also work on local activism and better provide a sense of community to the people in the area. Now, a lot of the structure isn't in place yet, but eventually it's going to do all the same things that a traditional religion does, but without the supernatural component. So you can get a sense of belonging, you can meet with like-minded people, provide support for each other, do things that celebrate the stages of life, weddings, funerals, and other things. And then activism is another big part of it too. So they'll do activism on the local level and also assist the global organization with larger things that they're doing. Now, the operations that we've done, which you may be familiar with some of these, particularly this first one. I don't know if any of you have seen the Baphomet statue. Well, Baphomet is a goat-like aspect of Satan. The pentagram is a symbol of that. And so there was a Ten Commandments monument out in Oklahoma, and everyone was unsuccessful getting it removed. So we offered to donate a very large statue of Baphomet. It's pretty big. It's got room for somebody to sit on it, and there's two kids kind of looking up at Baphomet. And just because I know this is going to be asked if anyone's familiar with Baphomet, normally Baphomet does have breasts because it's kind of a yin-yang kind of thing, a little male, a little female. But we felt that they would use that against us, and they would say, no, we can't have the Baphomet statue because of the breasts. Normally we're very pro-breast, pro-female, but unfortunately the people in Oklahoma are not. Well, the government, I should say, not all the people. So we're hoping to have the Baphomet statue installed right next to the Ten Commandments. I think they would go very nicely together, kind of a counterbalance thing. Now, the next thing that we did was the Satanic activity books. Those were in Orange County, Florida. They were handing out Bibles and other religious materials there. So we got our activity books and presented those, and they didn't really like it. But once we forced the issue with lawyers, they were finally forced to either accept it or not allow religious materials. And of course they couldn't allow anything satanic because their real goal is to proliferate their religion, and they have no interest in plurality. So once the issue had been forced, they opted to go with separation of church and state and secularism. And they finally realized what a good idea that was when something they didn't like was going to be put in there. So that was another a big one. Then there's the right to accurate medical information. This one has to do with women's health care. In informed consent states such as Missouri, a woman has to be subjected to some very unscientific propaganda in order to have an abortion. So we provide a form that you can submit where you say that that's against your religious beliefs. Now, you don't have to be a member of the Satanic Temple or be a Satanist or anything like that. You just have to believe that your body is inviolable. And if you have a sincere, deep belief in that, then you can state that as a religious objection. And if it's not honored, we will file a lawsuit on your behalf. Now, the next thing that's kind of goes along those same lines is the Protect the Children campaign. Now, in states where there's corporal punishment, and I don't really know if there is here or not because I'm not a parent, but anywhere that there is, the child can fill it out as a religious exemption and present that. And if it's not honored, we'll file a lawsuit for that as well. Now, nobody take us up on either of those two offers yet, so we don't know if they haven't been used or if they just haven't had any objections when they were used. But we're eager to force the issue as soon as we can. Next thing is the holiday displays. You may have seen those recently. There was one that we were going to try and get in Christmas 2013. We kind of got on that late though, so it didn't make it. But we were early last year, and we got that one in Florida. It was kind of a cheap thing. Looked like somebody made it in a grade school class, but it made a point, and it was enough to anger one Catholic woman, known as the Catholic Warrior now, to go down there and tear it down. But it was repaired and put back up, so no problem there. Now the better holiday display was the Snaketivity, as it's called, and that was done by our Detroit chapter. And that one I think looks pretty nice. It's this snake that's wrapped around a cross, and it says the greatest gift is knowledge, and it has a book there, which is Revolt of the Angels by Anatole France, by the way. But look that up online. It's pretty cool looking. And there's going to be a lot more to come too. We've got all sorts of things in the works, and so that's pretty much all that I have. So I can then take questions.
Hand up right here.
Yeah. You talked earlier about being adversarial to social conventions. What sort of conventions are you adversarial?
Arbitrary social conventions.
Yes.
If I didn't add that qualifier, I apologize, because that's actually crucial. Some social conventions are actually good if it has some sort of a basis in a moral code that, like for example, the one I was talking about that makes sense because it's based on the importance of human beings and our conscience and that sort of thing, or also things that are based on reason and empirical evidence. Now, if it's not based on that, if it just is some sort of set of rules that seem to be handed down from some sort of divine fiat or something, or rules of society left over from Victorian times, which seems to be a kind of a problem still, then we're opposed to those sorts of things. And the same thing for unjust laws that don't follow that very human-based morality and reason and empirical evidence and that sort of thing.
Can you give a specific example, though? I was just curious.
Let's see, what would be a good example?
Maybe abstinence before marriage?
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, things like abstinence, education. Really, anything sexual is going to be a pretty good example of that, because a lot of people have very strange, very primitive views about sex, and also. Especially anything that has to do with women, because there's still a lot of sexism that's pervasive, and this seems to show up the most in areas of sexuality, because more traditional cultures tend to suppress female sexuality.
The question was, what are some arbitrary social conventions that the Satanist perspective counteracts, right? I mean, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
Got a whole bunch of hands.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the big atheist leaders like Dawkins and Hitchens, they seem to imply that atheism is the lack of religion. I was wondering if you think Satanism is opposes that view.
Well, actually, if they ever did state that, which I don't know that they did, that's actually incorrect, because atheism just means not theism, and theism is a belief in a god or gods. So it's simply a lack of belief in a god or gods. Now, it can be a positive statement that there can be no such being, but generally for most people it's agnostic atheism, where you simply lack a belief, although you don't have absolute knowledge of everything. So you don't believe it in the same way that you don't believe in goblins, fairies, unicorns, and that sort of thing. So you can have atheistic religion depending on how you define it. Now, some people define it as being supernatural, but we don't agree with that, because religion can be so much more than just this supernatural component. There's the community aspect of it, and there's also the sincere, deeply held beliefs, which everyone has that, and that can be considered a religion, and especially in the context of privilege, because you have people with a supernatural belief that can just say, well, this is my religion, and then that's supposed to trump what everyone else thinks. But our beliefs are just as sincere and deeply held as theirs, so they should carry equal weight, and maybe even more so, because they're based on logic, reason, empirical evidence, and that sort of thing.
There's a hand up here. Go ahead.
I was just wondering what the gender ratio is in your organization. You were talking about women's issues and rights, and I just didn't know what the breakdown is.
It is about 50-50. There might be slightly more women. In my chapter, it's pretty close to 50-50. Yeah, and I think every chapter is pretty much the same way. So I can't be sure any more exact than that, but it's pretty close to 50-50.
Do you guys have like sets of practices for institutions such as marriage and education for kids and family things like that?
Now that's the stuff that we're actually working on right now. There will eventually be some ceremonies and that sort of thing to mark the stages of life, and weddings, of course, will be one of those things. I've actually written a set of those. They kind of need a little bit more work, but we definitely need to have something like that in place. It's going to become more of an issue later as the chapters get bigger. Right now they're not very large. The largest ones probably have a little over 20 people in them, and there's some that's just a handful of people. So we're kind of just putting all of that in place right now, but eventually we're going to have all of that.
How often do you meet? And like when you do meet, is it a very formal thing, or is it, is there like a set prescribed way, or is it informal?
It's very informal right now because we're kind of just getting started. So we've only had one full meeting so far. We've had a couple of video chats and things like that, and there's going to be a couple of those this week for some campaign work that we're doing. And then in a couple of weeks we'll have another full chapter meeting again. But eventually we're going to try and get it to where we're meeting at least every other week, and we want it to be a mix of fun and business. So I think that's the most effective and what people will enjoy. Now, who else had back there?
So I'm sorry if I'm misunderstanding, but do you actually believe in Satan, or is he just a symbol of what you believe in?
It's just symbolic. So we don't believe that an actual Satan exists. To us, Satan is simply a metaphorical construct that just symbolizes the ideals we have, such as empathy, compassion, reason, social justice, and that sort of thing, and the rebellion against all things antithetical to those concepts. So, like, say for example, when we say "Hail Satan," that means hail to our ideals. It's an affirmation of all the things that we believe in. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I actually forgot to touch on some of that. In detail, anyway. I mentioned it, but I didn't do the detailed part that I had planned on. Okay, back there.
So, as a religion, do you have any supernatural or spiritual components? Because a religion usually has a creation story, ending story, sort of like that. Or would you say that your creation story is purely scientific and logical?
We do not have a creation story other than what science knows about our origins. The entire point for us is that supernaturalism and religion can be entirely divorced from one another, and so it's kind of a paradigm shift with religion. So we define religion as sincere, deeply held belief, and supernaturalism doesn't necessarily enter into it. So while most religions do have a supernatural component, this one doesn't at all. Does that answer your question? Yeah, so it's real different.
I would like to know if you could touch a bit more on one of the 7 tenors that you read out that was talking about how far you can go with your freedom, because I'm kind of curious, like, how do you define where your freedom ends and somebody else's freedom starts?
Well, that's pretty complicated, and there's a lot of ways of looking at that. So it says that others' freedom should be respected, including the freedom to offend. And it's kind of in a way left up to the individual a little bit, because we don't like to tell people what to think. I mean, the organization has the ideas that they think and believe, but we only require certain things of members, just kind of going along with it in general. We don't actually have any rules where we tell people what they should and shouldn't think. I tend to go with a pretty basic thing, kind of similar to the golden rule, which is to do unto others, but with the qualifier that other people may have a different opinion of you as to what they like. So what you want to be done to you may not be what someone else wants to be done to them. So, taking that into consideration. And, some things are a matter of opinion too, That's why there's court systems and that sort of thing, because it's not always readily apparent to who's right and who's wrong in a particular situation. Now, you should always bow to reason and empirical evidence, and how you feel as far as conscience and applying logic to that. But not absolutely everything is going to be defined, so some things will be a matter of opinion. Now, did that answer it enough? Okay, sir?
You say you guys fight against everything that you deem unjust. Who deems what's just and what's unjust?
Well, that comes from our normative values, which the basis of those is our evolution as a social species. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with any of the experiments that have been done on different animals that have ancestors that are in common with ours, like chimps or wolves or even ants, really. There will be a survival value with a group. So you survive by being part of the group, and that's how those ideas evolve. So what you think of as a conscience would be that, but the raw conscience, not one that's been modified by other arbitrary beliefs, such as rules that might come through more traditional religions, where you're said to do this or that simply by divine fiat of some supposed being that wants you to do certain things and not other things. So this is something that would be very intuitive, something that you can feel as conscience, but also you can apply logic and reason to it, and that gives you a better idea of what you should do or shouldn't do. And so that's kind of where we get that from. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not. It's kind of complicated, but.
There were a number of hands. How about back there in the green?
Does your organization believe in afterlife?
No. We follow skepticism, so we take that approach on everything. So not just the God concept, but things like afterlife, or anything really, any objective statement that you can think of, or any empirical claim, we look at through the lens of reason and empiricism. So we think that when you die, you just die, and that's that. Sure.
So, me or?
Oh, I was, but I'll get you next.
I wasn't sure, I thought so there's like no heaven or hell for you then? Like when you just die?
Oh,
that's it?
right. That's it. There's no heaven, no hell. There's actually no dualism. So what you are is simply your brain. So your electrical and chemical signals, a very complex array of them, but still something physical nonetheless. So when you die and all activity in the brain ceases, then that's it. You don't exist at that point. Okay, yeah,
Satan is as a symbol, kind of counterintuitive, since it has that stigma. Do you think you'd be better off by calling your belief system by any other name or using another symbol?
No, it really wouldn't, because Satan just just stands for the things that we believe. So it really wouldn't make sense to call it anything else because of the fact that it's a left-hand path, individualistic sort of religion, and that we're in opposition to any sort of arbitrary rules of society. So it really makes more sense as Satanism, even though it's potentially offensive to some people. And that can work in our favor in other ways too. Because while I want to humanize it for people who are less fundamentalist, people who are more fundamentalist, who are never going to accept us regardless of what we say, it ends up being a good tool to motivate them to see separation of church and state and secularism as a good idea.
There was another couple hands. You can go ahead. In the black.
So I have a question too, sir. Do you play D&D?
Not recently, but I have. I played quite a bit of D&D when I was younger. I have a very large bag of dice in my closet to this day, and some books.
As do I. My main question is, why do you think Satanism was used as a target during Satanist scare, all that stuff, that kind of stuff?
Well, the reason is really just because of moral panic, and the idea of Satan and Satanism was used to demonize various groups of people throughout history. So this wasn't the first time that it was done like that. Really, any out group that you can think of has been compared to Satan and Satanists at one point.
Do you think that by taking on this title, you'll detract somewhat from that, like, weapon that's used by religious groups?
No, we're actually using it because we are in opposition to religious groups to a large extent. The more fundamentalist ones, anyway, ones that seek to have their religion in the sphere of government, in the public sector. And so we are very much adversarial to that, and we're outcasts, and we embrace being in the out group, being the other, the dehumanized and demonized ones.
How many chapters are there?
Let's see, there's probably...
And is this worldwide as opposed to just...
Yeah, it is worldwide. There's probably 13, 14 of them or so right now. And there are a couple that are in other countries. There's one in Finland and one in Italy. The rest are in the U.S.
Thank you.
Hop back there, guy in blue.
How do you, for lack of a better term, evangelize or get your message out?
Well, we don't really. I mean, social networking and just talking to people and that sort of thing. But we really don't try and push our point of view on other people. You know, if people are receptive to it and want to accept it, that's great. We'll embrace them and welcome them as one of us. But you know, if they're not into it, that's okay.
You find people seek you out in search of answers, or they're okay?
Yeah, they definitely do. There's been a lot of interest in us, and not just people wanting to be members, but people who have some goals that are similar to ours. Different kinds of Satanists, like theistic Satanists, sometimes will ally with us. People of other religions, sometimes even Christians or Muslims if they're of a more moderate sort. So it's really the division that we're focusing on tends to be more of a fundamentalist versus everyone else kind of thing.
You have a group literature that you use or draw from?
A little bit. There is some philosophy written on the main website, and I've also written some myself. And then, as far as where the tradition of Satan comes from, it's mostly from classic literature like Paradise Lost and Revolt of the Angels and that sort of thing, and those characteristics of the Satan character represent ideals that we have.
Do you have any written about your specific set of beliefs?
Yes, on the main website in the FAQ, there's a write-up about that, and then I've also written a few things that tie into it as well. And there's a podcast, and there's also somebody that does a blog. So we're still in the beginning stages, but it's out there. There's still some to be written, but most of the basic stuff is out there. We do kind of leave it open to a certain extent, though, because we really don't like telling people what to think. We have what we think, but we only like to provide guidelines really for members. We don't want to tell them specific things that they can or cannot believe and that sort of thing.
Can you tell us that web address?
Yes, it's thesatanictemple.com, and as a matter of fact, I've got cards which I will.
Do you want me to pass those around? Would you like a card? Take one.
Yes, please.
Pass them down.
Okay, so go ahead.
Do you support LGBT rights?
Absolutely. We feel that that's very important. People should be treated equally regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity or anything else that you can think of. We feel that they're exactly like us, and we don't like this sort of heteronormative bias that's pervasive throughout society, and we would prefer it if there wasn't any such thing.
Bear with me, I'm still trying to figure out how to word this exactly.
Okay, well I can give you a minute to think of it.
So let me get this straight. You guys do not mind to call yourselves by a name that evokes in many people's minds the idea that you believe in like a fallen angel that is pure evil, because that Satan is like, there are other aspects of Satan that for you guys is a very iconic, it's like very iconic and it's worthy of representing.
It is. Yep, you're quite right about that, and we're perfectly okay with that. Like I was saying, we embrace our status as outcasts and outsiders, and we're perfectly fine playing the adversarial role, and so it symbolizes certain things that we believe in, and it's useful in that manner. And it's also motivating in a poison pill sense for the more fundamentalist people. And we do try to dispel misconceptions as much as possible about what we think and believe and that sort of thing. So if people are paying attention and actually listening, they eventually get that we're about empathy and compassion and things like that, and not evil in the sense that they think of it. Now, is it evil in comparison to a specific set of laws from a particular religion? Well, yes, because we believe in a lot of things that go very much against religion, because there's a lot of rules about sexuality. Various gods, for whatever reason, found it of the utmost importance to be concerned about what a little group of primates did with their genitals, and we don't think that makes any sense. Well, as an example anyway, and there's other things too. Now, of course, there's certain things where we are going to be in agreement with religions, because most of them have a prohibition on murder and certain acts of violence, although sometimes they justify murder. The Bible and the Quran, for example, God has committed all sorts of terrible acts, genocides and mass murders and all kinds of things. So it kind of depends on how you look at evil. Evil from which perspective? Now, from the perspective of modern society, we're mostly not evil. We believe in a lot of the same things that most other people believe in. But if you go to the exact rules of literal interpretations of these ancient holy books, we very much are evil, because we are the opposite of them. If you can consider it that way, because to us really they're evil and we're good. So hopefully that makes sense.
We'll take your question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, how do you feel about conflicting ideologies? Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to word this without sounding like I'm personally attacking.
No, go ahead. No, believe me, I've heard far worse than anything you could come up with.
Say that there's a person who conflicts directly with what you believe, but it's not without their right, well, it's not outside of their right as a human being to do so. Would you agree with them doing it still?
Voicing it, you mean? Or a certain, like acting something out?
The best way I can think right now is like, so you have Christians who they have their masses and stuff like that. Obviously you don't believe in God, but you think they're wrong still. That obviously you think there isn't a God.
Right.
So you're atheist.
Correct.
So would you just leave them alone if they left you alone, or is it like a personal thing to go against them?
No, we would absolutely leave them alone. Even if they are going after us, we would leave them alone. Insofar as what they're doing in their own space. Now, as far as what they might try to do in the public sphere, we would try to remove them from the public sphere anywhere that would affect us and other people that don't go along with that. But as far as what they want to do in their own churches and that sort of thing, we really don't care. We think that everyone has the right to believe what they want to believe and do what they want to do. And that's actually one of the things that we fight for, is to keep this out of the public sphere, is to keep that free for everyone, not just the majority religion, so everyone can do and believe it as they wish, provided it doesn't harm other people.
I've heard a saying that suggests that atheistic groups don't seem to last as long as groups have people who communicate acceptance of supernatural elements. Like last one year, do you have thoughts on that? Like why atheistic groups may be not, why they wouldn't even last as long as
well,
people who believe in supernatural.
I think that it's just simply because there are more supernatural religions by far than ones that are opposed to it, or atheistic ones. Now, there are some atheistic religions that have been around a long time, like Buddhism, for example. But there's just so few of them. So I think it's really hard to say, because the sample size is really too small to know.
Hey, you talked about a little bit about holiday decorations.
Yeah.
Do you guys have, like, do you permit people to celebrate holidays, or do you have like certain holidays that you as a group celebrate?
We do want to come up with our own holidays. Now, as far as this idea of permitting, I mean, people can do what they want. We don't really say anything about that. We're really only concerned with the public sphere and what affects people who don't want to be affected by that. But there's a variety of holidays celebrated and things that people believe in. We do want to make our own, though. We would like to have our own set of holidays, and there's actually various ideas proposed that are pretty interesting that I'm actually liking. So in the future, we might have some.
Maybe hop over here and then.
Yeah, probably time for a couple more.
I'm scrolling through your website and stuff, and one of the FAQs is, I'm offended, and then your reply is, please go elsewhere. We are probably offended by your beliefs, and we do not send you hateful emails. My question is, how are you offended by other people's beliefs?
Well, that was more of a rhetorical response. Because they're saying they're offended. Lucian's personality is very much like that. And after you've heard the I'm offended and you are the most awful thing that I have ever encountered speech, it kind of goes like that. So that might not be the most tactful response, but I think it's apt for the context of the question, saying that you're offended, it just kind of almost has that response coming. I might word it a little bit nicer, but not much nicer, really.
Is there a hierarchy within your organization?
Very, very loosely. We're mostly against hierarchy. Having a lot of hierarchy actually causes problems, and not just with humans, with other animals too. There have been a few studies about this. So we have hierarchy only as much as we need to. Otherwise, it's very loose, and people are given a lot of freedom to do what they want. We're kind of...
Is there like a lead chapter?
Well, there's the national organization. There's the two founders, and then there is one chapter that was the first chapter in Detroit, and that's run by Jex Blackmore, and she acts as the chapter advisor and helps other chapter heads and approves them and that sort of thing.
I have a question. You mentioned you have interest in women's reproductive rights. Does the temple have any plans of being like a source of unbiased scientific information, like offering information about that issue as opposed to crisis pregnancy centers?
I'm not entirely sure exactly how far we're going to get involved with that. We do believe in everyone having the best scientific information available, and it's possible in the future that we might get involved with proliferating that information if we see that our presence would be helpful in that. Otherwise, we might just do what we can to enable others or stop whoever might be preventing them from providing that information to women.
I think we have time for one last question.
Do you guys have like diversity initiatives where you strive to have higher rates of racial or ethnic or social diversity within your chapters?
We haven't really worked on that. We have some diversity.
Kind of happens naturally.
Yeah, I don't know the makeup of all of the chapters.
Or would that be something you would strive to enhance, is diversity across borders?
Yeah, it would be nice. It really depends on who signs up, though, because we don't say anything about who's a member and who's not a member, because becoming a member is as simple as just going to the website and signing up. So there's not any selection process. So it's entirely free to any individual. So really the only way you could do anything is if you tried to advertise to a particular demographic or something, but we don't actually do that. But you know, anyone's free to sign up and become a member.
We welcome everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yep, everyone is welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. If there are remaining questions, I'm sure that Mr. Bale will answer those by email.
Yep, you can get in touch with me via various ways on the card there. So I will just say that it was nice speaking to you all. Thanks for having me out here, and hail Satan.